Welcome back to the Rules of Engagement. Before we jump into game number 2 being creator Nestea, let me remind you guys, MLG Dallas Winter Championships is coming up on March 15th through the 17th. If you're anywhere near the Dallas region, or even if you want to fly in there, the tickets are on sale now. 30% off if you buy them online, $35 online, $50 at the door. Of course, if you want to be a baller, there's VIP tickets. You can go online and check those out. They are selling out though, so if you want to be a baller, get those quickly. But most importantly, 30% off if you buy your tickets ahead of time online. The events are amazing. I encourage you guys, if you're in the area, to go ahead and check it out. Now let's jump into Creator vs. Nestea, game number 2. It's going to be on Whirlwind, and a couple important things that are really cool about this game are, one, talking about how Zerg can often switch into Mutas play, even against a Protoss who opens Phoenixes. Talking about how you can react to seeing triple Stargate play come out of the Protoss player. And then, finally, an age-old question. How do mass Mutas play out against mass Protoss air? More specifically, Void Rays, because Protoss masses air, it's usually going to be Void Rays. So, let's jump into this replay right now. And we're going to talk about, basically, if your opponent goes Phoenix, right? So, let's say Creator's going Phoenix, he's killing a bunch of stuff. Right? That's normal. A lot of Zergs will not want to go into Mutas, but sometimes you can. There's a couple important things. One is you gotta hide the Spire. So sometimes you can have an Overlord spread creep in a corner, build a Spire there, and hope they don't see it. Another way is you can pile a whole bunch of Overlords on top of the Spire so that they can't see it either, right? Just vision is very hard to see the Spire. Even if you can see the building, you might assume it's a Spine or a Spore Crawler unless you can actually click on it, which is actually very hard as well. So building a lot of Overlords, putting them over that location makes it very hard for your opponent to see what's going on there. They're naturally going to assume the Overlords are clumped there because they're near a Spore Crawler. They might not also realize that there's also a Spire going on there. And then you always want to get a few Hydralists to push those Phoenixes out. As soon as you get a Hydralist, they're not going to suspect that you'd be going into Mutalist. At least it's not as an obvious suspicion. And a Hydralist will deny those Phoenixes from scouting around because, while Queens are nice, Hydralists really force the Phoenixes out. Queens can kind of annoy them. Hydralists say, get out, Phoenixes, or we're going to damage you. And when the Phoenixes get out, they can't see the Spire being built. So, going Mutalist is kind of nice against Phoenixes. In fact, let's actually just jump forward a couple notches here. At the end of the day, though, he does a good job on tricking Creator Prime. Creator Prime doesn't end up seeing that Spire, so he's getting a couple of Colossi. But part of his plan, anyway, is to go this triple Stargate play. So, it's a little bit unfortunate. The good news is he starts to make a bunch of Void Rays instead of Phoenixes because when you're Protoss and you're going triple Stargate, let's actually rewind just a tiny second, you're typically going to be going for Void Rays because they're more useful in general, unless you know your opponent's going Mutalist, but in this case, he doesn't. So now talking about it from Nestea's side again, right? You're a Zerg player, you say, haha, I went Mass Mutas, and he went Phoenixes, but I can hit him with overwhelming force right now. He's not prepared. I successfully hit it from him. I can go get a bunch of free kills. And all that's true, right? Running here, getting a whole bunch of probe kills is awesome. And now you see triple Stargate. Your first instinct is, okay, I can delay the Stargate production, kill a couple of these pylons. That'll shut it down a bit. Then I'll go around micro some more. Of course, when the Phoenixes try to annoy me, I can chase them a bit, then turn around, run away. And if they chase me, I can turn around and get another volley off. So, you know exactly what he's doing here. You run away. When they come in, you turn around again. That type of micro. But the main idea here is you get a bunch of probe kills. Eventually, these Mutas will probably be taken out. The whole point, though, is you've seen triple Stargate, right? So how do you want to react to triple Stargate? Well, if they're going triple Stargate, you've been joining up behind your Muta Harass, right? Let's talk about a few things here. He's been joining up behind his Muta Harass. He's got plenty of drones. Plenty of drones. And that means he's going to have plenty of minerals. He's got plenty of bases, plenty of drones. His opponent's going Stargates. So it means it's not going to be huge ground force to really do a lot of mass cell warp and harass, at least in the near future. So he's in good shape mineral-wise, right? The downside is his opponent can produce a mass air force, right? And trying to take out Protoss in air doesn't always work that well. Nestea decides to try it, but what I would suggest, regardless of how you're going to spend your gas, right? You can spend at your choice. You've got all these extra minerals. Right now, it's at 1,800, right? But with 90 drones, that number is going to skyrocket. So he's going to be up to 4,000 or 5,000 within a few minutes. So you got to spend those minerals. How can you spend minerals in an effective way against Stargate units? Spore Crawlers. 100 minerals each, and counting the drone, or sorry, 100, whatever. They're very cheap. My math isn't always great. They're very cheap, right? Spore crawlers, very cheap. And they have a lot of life. They have a lot of range. Very effective against the air. You can move them around. Make a ton of spore crawlers. And just move them all over the map. Make a ton of queens. 150 minerals each. Only 2 food. A lot of life. 185 life. Good damage output against air. Good range. Transfuse ability. Make a lot of queens. A lot of spore crawlers. Spread the creeping spore crawlers all over the map. It's a great way to burn up all those minerals. Be very, very anti-frugal. Be very, very generous in your ability to spend minerals on those units because you can have a ton of extra minerals with those drones you made. So go ahead and feel free to do that. Then while you're spending your gas, I'd like to see you go Swarmos because they're the best Zerg vs Protoss unit in Heart of Swarm. And if they're accompanied by Spores and Queens, there's really, they can deal with any of the ground-based threats that can be coming at you. So go ahead and make tons of Swarm hosts, but mostly focus on spending all these extra minerals you have on those queens and spore cores, because you've got the extra minerals, why not spend them? So the next thing we're going to come to is, Nestea decides to not spend his minerals, he just banks them. And then he also decides to just keep massing mutas against the Protoss Air Force. Now, no Protoss would suspect a Zerg would do this because it's normally not a good idea. And so, because they're not going to suspect it, you're going to end up in a situation where you're going to have a ton of mutalists, right? You're going to have a ton of mutalists, and the Protoss Air Army is going to end up being primarily Void Rays. So if you come in here, you can knock out a base, and then there's going to come a point when you decide to fight a big battle. Because they're primarily Void Rays, you're saying, you know what? Let me go ahead and try to tackle these Void Rays, right? So let's jump over here. Actually, let's just do it this way. So if you look at all the mutas, there's 32 mutalists versus 11 Void Rays and 4 Phoenixes. So let's look at how much that is in cost, basically, right? So the mutalists, right? There's 32 of them. That's 3,200 minerals. 3,200 minerals and 3,200 gas. Now, how much does the 11 Void Rays and 4 Phoenixes cost? That's going to be 2050 gas. Sorry, actually, let's use a different color for the Protoss. So, versus the Phoenix, we're going to put a versus sign here. Oops. Versus the Phoenix Void Ray, the Protoss Aircon machine. The amount of money he has into that is going to be 2050 gas. And the mineral cost of that is 2750 and 3350. So we can see here that the Zerg put a little more money into his air army than the Protoss. But that's to be expected because the Protoss has to build a bunch of Stargates. The Zerg will typically have more bases while the Protoss is building Stargates. So this is actually a fairly even situation in a real game what you'd anticipate as both players are investing into mass air. This type of resource allocation is pretty expected, right? But now let's look at, okay, we know Phoenixes are better than Mutalists, but what if they're very Void Ray heavy? How good are Void Rays versus Mutalists? Well, the upgrades mostly cancel each other out. In fact, they slightly help Void Rays as they scale up. But let's take a look at the numbers if they don't have any upgrades. The Void Rays have 250 life, 250 HP, and the Void Rays do 12 damage per second to light units. On the other hand, the Mutalisks, right, what do? So the Mutalisks do 13 divided by... The Mutalisks have 120 life, and they do it's like 8.7 DPS. We'll say 9 DPS, just to make it easier number. I mean, it's a little bit less than that, and especially as upgrades scale up, it's going to look lower. And this is including the bounce, right? They do 6 DPS at primary target. The bounce roughly adds another 3 or thereabouts. But the main idea is that looking at these two numbers. Now, roughly, you should have 1.5 to 2, roughly 1.5 times as many Mutalistic Void Rays, maybe twice as many, right? Even if you have twice as many, let me erase this, you're still going to have less life. Your damage per second is going to be a little higher, but remember, you've got less range, you've got Phoenixes accompanying them. On average, you have 1.5 times as many, which means you'll have roughly the same damage per second, right? A little bit better, but your life will be a lot less. So, overall, Void Rays and Mutants are fairly even. Right, they're fairly even in a straight-on engagement, but with any Phoenixes backing up those Void Rays, the Protoss layer is going to be better than the Mutalists, right? So you really don't want to go heads up against the Protoss there, because even though Mutas do okay against Void Rays, they're roughly even. If there's Phoenix backing up, you can lose, and your main advantage is, of course, that mobility. So jumping back into this game, if you're a Zerg player going air versus air, and they're Void Ray heavy, if they're Phoenix heavy, you're going to lose. If they're Void Ray heavy, what you want to do is use that mobility. So right here, you'd want to run away and then go straight to the main. And if the Phoenixes chase you, you turn around and shoot the Phoenixes. Then the Void Rays, of course, should be left behind in the dust. If you try to take a heads up, what's going to happen is, unfortunately, try to focus the Phoenixes first. You did a good job of that, but the combination is just too much. More Phoenixes rally in. An additional rally unit is going to lead the Protoss to a victory here, just because every Phoenix is so powerful against Mutas. Each one that rallies in adds so much extra damage, and the Voiders are such great tanks that a Zerg will come out behind the situation. So if you're ever going to decide to go Mass Air versus Protoss Mass Air, and they're going Void Rays because they don't know you've committed to Mutinous, you've got to use that mobility advantage, right? And let's say that you have more Phoenixes, so you add in Corruptors. You still got to use mobility advantage, because Corruptors are faster than Void Rays as well, so you can still stay away from the Void Rays. When the Phoenixes chase, your Corruptors turn around and shoot the Phoenixes, and then your Mutas go and do damage on Harass. Either way, for playing air, you got to use that mobility. You can't try to go heads up against Protoss. If you do want to go heads up, you should be using units like Ultralists, like Roaches, Corruptors, Broodlords, Infestors, not airplay. So the main story of this game, though, is if you see triple Stargate from a Protoss, you really want to spend all those minerals on Queens and Spore Crawlers and probably stop getting Mutalists. Spend that gas in Swarm Hosts, maybe some Infestors, but really spend all those minerals on Queens and Spore Crawlers. So wraps up game number 2. Take a short break. We'll be right back with game number 3.